Great. Thanks everyone for being here. I'm Abby Fammartino. I'm the Director of Health and Sustainability Programs and Research with the Strategic Initiatives Team, the CIA. It's an honor to present this next presentation, which is about sustainable opportunities in baking. We're going to hear from two amazing CIA School of Baking faculty members here about the strategies for making baking better for both the planet and for the bottom line, as well as for people. And I love the topic of this session. I think it's a really underexplored area of menu innovation. From working with more nutritious grains and flours to exploring more affordable and flavorful vegan options for baked goods and glazes, the opportunities are really vast here. So shifting ingredients, especially in baking, can seem like a small step toward making a more sustainable food system, but when you, in aggregate, the implications can be really big here. So I hope you walk away with some inspiring ideas for how you can shift baking and pastry offerings to be more sustainable and for people and planet while also being profitable. So I'm going to now introduce our fabulous presenters. Rachel Wyman, a CIA graduate, 05, also holds an MBA. She's a lecturing instructor in baking and pastry arts at the CIA in Hyde Park. She's an award-winning and lifelong baker who, I love this fun fact from her bio, she learned to write her name in buttercream using a pastry bag before she could hold a pencil. So she opened the Montclair Bread Company in 2012. And in 2021, she released a cookbook, We'll Run for Donuts, which she'll have a book signing for during the reception. Rachel was named one of the top 25 influential bakers in Bake Magazine in 2015. And she took the top prize in the Food Network's Donut Shutdown in 2014. I don't know about this, but Showdown. Okay, that's better. Showdown, not Shutdown. But she shut it down and won first place. So please join me in welcoming Rachel. I'm going to also quickly now introduce Genevieve, and then Rachel will begin her presentation. So up next then will be Genevieve Melly, also a CIA 05 grad, and a master baker, who's an associate professor in the School of Baking and Pastry Arts at the CIA. Genevieve was raised in a CIA grad family in the food industry, working in a number of prestigious restaurants in Manhattan, including Dandelion and Café Boulud. She's been an executive pastry chef at top restaurants. She was named 30 under 30 in the Zagat survey, and is also a cookbook author, first producing a cookbook called Sweet Nature in 2016. And she's the author of an upcoming CIA cookbook coming out soon, which is all about sustainability and pastries. And I think we have a slide. Here we go, coming soon, summer of 2024. So please join me in welcoming Genevieve. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Rachel to begin her presentation.
So, I was thinking about what to talk about, and it's titled Accidentally Vegan Donuts, but the whole donut thing for me was an accident. I had a bakery in Montclair, and I was making loaves to send to the farmer's market, and one of those loaves was brioche, and I had to feed my staff breakfast, so I made donuts. So it was accidentally brioche donuts to begin with, and that kind of thrust my bakery into the center stage, like the Food Network show and all of that. And we like to tinker as dessert professionals, and I started tinkering with the idea of making a sourdough donut. And there's all this stuff on Instagram about people using their sourdough cast-off to make sweet things, but it's not really sourdough. And to me, sourdough has that kind of really chewy, airy texture to it, and it's not just sourdough added to a brioche or something that's like got that tighter crumb that's like sweet and supple. I wanted it to have that sourdough bite, so I started working on this formula, and it evolved over 5 or 6 years. And in creating this presentation is the first time that I was ready to hand it over to somebody to try to make on their own, because it was a little bit, high maintenance, as sourdough can tend to be. And I was really lucky to have the opportunity to be a part of the Women's History Month menu at the Culinary Institute's Apple Pie Bakery in Hyde Park. So I did a bunch of testing on it to get it ready to hand off to the students and faculty member that was running the show there, and got great feedback that it actually works. over and over again when I'm not personally the one making it, and I can assure you that the formula that you have will work. And it's another use for sourdough. So you have to have a sour starter. So you have to contact a local bakery or start your own. You can start it from just flour and water, and it takes 7 days to get to the point that it's strong enough when you're feeding it every day. You know, it's like another child. You have to feed it flour and water every day to propagate all of the yummy bacteria that makes it rise. And I do have yeast in this formula too, because production, and I like to sleep sometimes. So, you know, in order to get a little bit of extra sleep, I put yeast in the dough so I don't have to pull it out quite as early in the morning. So yeah, it started out, I was using oil in the formula, and then lately there's been a lot of advances in the vegan solid spread. I don't know if we're allowed to call it butter, but the, you know, the thing that's solid. And I used BioLife as the brand that I created this formula with, but I've since used multiple other vegan spreads, and they all work nicely. So,
Rachel, with the sourdough starter, can you start it with any kind of flour, or do you have a recommendation if they're starting it from home?
So I always use unbleached, unbromated flour, and I use, my flour preference is King Arthur's or Galahad. It's super consistent all the time. I don't use a bread flour. Flour has protein in it. When the protein is hydrated, it turns into gluten, and that's what traps the air and makes it nice and airy and like bubble gum blows up. So the King Arthur's or Galahad is kind of on the higher end of an all-purpose, kind of approaching the bread flour spectrum of protein, but it's so consistent. And I like using the locally milled, locally sourced stuff. But when you're doing volume and you need to keep cost in mind, I feel like there's a really great value in what King Arthur's producing, and a good company to get behind. They treat their employees well. So King Arthur's or Galahad is my flour of choice, but you can use anything. The whole wheat flour and rye flour ferment super fast. So if you incorporate a little bit, like 5% of wheat or rye flour, because of all of the whole grain nutrients in it, it's going to ferment a lot faster. So it'll get your starter going faster if you're just getting it going from flour and water. So from flour and water, then I work in thirds. So every day it's 1/3 of the old stuff, plus 1/3 flour, 1/3 water, and so on and so on and so on. And I try to organize it through maybe an Excel spreadsheet so that I'm not throwing anything away. All of it goes into the next batch. I really don't like throwing anything away ever. So this is what is in the formula. It's 77 grams flour, 77 grams water, and 77 grams of the sour from yesterday. So, and it is ready to go. So I know Instagram makes it cute where there's like a rubber band and it goes beyond the rubber band and you have to like measure it, and we don't really do that in real life. We look at the top and see that it's like risen and it hasn't fallen, and sometimes there's a little crack in the center. Can you guys see it? Oh,
No, we can't quite see it yet. We can get maybe a video because this is exciting to see the bubbles. We cannot yet, but soon.
Okay, soon. I'm see it.
Hoping if we can get the video going. This is also, did everyone enjoy these donuts with breakfast? Were you guys here for breakfast and try these accidental donuts?
Yeah.
As a side note,
That's
amazing.
so exciting.
Yeah.
Like, it's so exciting that you got to have them for breakfast.
They
Because
were
so often
amazing.
it's like you do these things and then there's all this stuff and you guys go away and here
Yeah.
with a bunch of donuts.
So we have in mind already how amazing these are, starting from the starter.
So, sour.
Sour.
This one's ready to go.
Yes.
Um,
I think, maybe let's see.
Yeah.
I think they know that we need the video. We need video. But yeah, I don't know. Tell us, maybe there's something else you want to.
I could talk for days.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so you have an Excel spreadsheet. So you use some of the extra starter to make donuts. What else do you use it for?
Bread.
Yeah. And a variety of other things. Can you freeze it?
You can, but so better yet, what I do is put it in a mason jar and put it in the back of my refrigerator and forget it's there. And I always have a mason jar of sour in the back of my refrigerator for when my staff decides that they're going to wash this dish and throw it out.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and then we don't have any left. So I always have some in the back of the fridge, and you can then just feed it, and over like 3 or 4 days from that, it's gonna be ready to go. And it gets funky, and it turns colors, and you can just kind of scrape that off the top, and oh, yay, sour. Okay,
yay.
So there it is.
That's good to know that you can scrape that off the top as
You
a
can
side note.
scrape
I have
that off
some
the
in the
top.
back of my fridge I need to scrape and build.
There you go.
That
So
looks great.
this is like ready to go. It's super active. Sometimes when it's like a little past its prime, it gets like a little line through it where it's starting to recede. And that's okay. It's just good to know that it's past its prime. So the next time you feed it, maybe you use colder water, or you put it in the refrigerator for a couple hours before you leave for the day. It's really the strongest if you can feed it twice a day, every 12 hours. But if it's just a once a day thing, then that works too. But you might want to put it in the refrigerator for a few hours and slow it down. And it's just something that as you work with it over time, you get to know your sour and what it likes, and how to keep it strong and fresh and going, and labor of love. So I have the water in the bowl, and then I'm going to add the sour to that. See, it's nice and glutinous.
Any tips for what you store your starter in at scale? Like if you're using a lot of it?
Yeah, so those like 30-gallon garbage cans work really well on wheels.
Yeah.
That's what, when I was doing major production and we had sourdough going throughout, we had an entire walk-in unit that was just 4 tubs of sour. So, and they were in 30-gallon buckets, and there would be a whole line of them. And then it was like this line you could use for this 4 hours, and then you'd go to the next line. And so all day, every hour, they were getting fed and rotated through the process.
Amazing.
They do make fermentation tanks that hold it at temperature. You know, they're like double-walled tanks that keep consistent temperature, and then there's a paddle in the middle, just like an ice cream machine, that will turn every whatever minutes to rotate the sour, and then you can open a spout and it doses it.
Oh, interesting.
So if you're in a major production setting, they are not as consistent as the 30-gallon buckets.
Okay.
That you can control a little bit
tip.
better.
Okay.
So sour, water. Again, I use just a little bit of yeast. It's like, I would say a quarter of the yeast that I would use if this was just yeast in the dough. And then there's a little bit of sugar, and and I hold back on the salt and the butter, and I'm gonna add the flour. So this is the largest batch that you can mix in a biggest KitchenAid comfortably. And you can do exactly 2 before you burn out the motor. So after 2, you have to take a break and let it cool down, because the 3rd will make it stop forever. My brother was getting married and wanted donuts for 300 people, and he's a park ranger in Shenandoah, Virginia. And did he do it right? Oh, cool. Yes. So he's a park ranger in Shenandoah, and he's like, I got you a cabin with like a really great kitchen. It wasn't a really great kitchen, it was like a kitchen. So I made donuts for 300 people in a KitchenAid mixer with a fryer that's as big as the one that's on the set right now. And we made it work. But I had to wait like 20 minutes between every batch and let the KitchenAid cool down. And, so I'm gonna mix this flour, water, sugar, yeast, sour, just until it starts to come together as a dough. Once you start adding a fat to it, the gluten's not going to develop as intensely because it acts as a lubricant, so it starts like slip sliding around. So I let it come together as a homogeneous mass before I add the butter-like substance. And then the salt inhibits the yeast activity, so I kind of let all that get going and get warmed up before I add the salt. I always keep the salt and the yeast separate.
Rachel, can you use coconut oil for like the butter substitute?
I have. It's not as creamy. It doesn't work quite the same. And then, you know, it gets like a little flaky when it's cold, so it doesn't incorporate as well as when it's coconut oil incorporated into the butter-like substance. So if this were a larger mixer, I would do it while it's mixing. But just drop that in there. So the cool thing about the vegan spreads is that they are, they break down really quickly. So when I'm doing this with an actual butter and I'm using it cold and putting it into the dough, it's like I have to slice it into smaller cubes before I add it so it will incorporate fully during the course of the mix. But the vegan stuff or the plant-based stuff just kind of smears in there and gets nice and creamy and incorporates very easily into the dough. So it's been pretty cool. And then, so we know that our ingredient costs have skyrocketed over the last 3 years. And I unintentionally made like a really profitable donut in this accidentally vegan sour donut. I just did the math, and at my retail prices, or not retail, my teeny tiny wholesale prices with zero buying power, it's like 4 or 5 cents a donut before you put the glazes on it.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
Yeah, and they sell on my retail counter for $4.75 a piece. So
do you think, are people finding them because they're vegan, or they just
absolutely.
like, it looks like it's delicious?
Well, both, I would say. So I label them on the counter as a sour donut. And then my staff knows to talk about them and let people know that they are plant-based or vegan, because I feel if it's labeled as vegan, a lot of non-vegan consumers won't try it.
Right.
Because there must be something lacking.
Yeah.
But if it's a sour donut that just happens to be vegan, that it's definitely, there's another value proposition there, because you have an audience that seeks out sourdough, and you have an audience that seeks out plant-based food. So you're really combining two potential customer bases.
Right.
Yeah. So it works really well. And then obviously I make sure that anything that I'm putting on the sour donut, glazes and toppings, is also vegan. Oh, forgot something. So this is not a required part of the dough, but one that I really like to add. These are the scraps from when I cut out the dough yesterday. And this is what we bakers call pâte fermentée, or fermented dough. And it could be any dough. So this could be baguette dough or brioche dough or whatever. If it's old dough, it's pâte fermentée. And I'm adding this to the mix as well, so nothing gets thrown out. When I cut out the donuts and there's the holes and the in-betweens, which you'll see in just a second, it's not going to get thrown out. It's going to go into tomorrow's dough. So you've got the sourdough and the pâte fermentée are both adding flavor because it's going to incorporate more carbon dioxide and more alcohol into the dough as the fermentation process happens. It's what happens during fermentation. And it acts as a natural preservative. So it lasts a little bit longer. There's zero waste, maximum flavor. It's like everything is winning about this process. And it also, when you incorporate the pâte fermentée, the mixing process goes faster. So in a typical spiral mixer, you can get the dough from start to finish in about 10 minutes or less. So works pretty well. I'm going to offstage this. And so what happens when that comes off the mixer and everything is fully incorporated, I put it on the dreaded half sheet pan and wrap it tightly and put it in the refrigerator overnight. I know we all hate half sheet pans in our bake shops, but it works really well because this batch is exactly 2 dozen donuts, and I can kind of stack these. I wrapped this tight in plastic wrap. They also make lids for half sheet pans that you can put a lid on it and then just stack them up, and that works really well too. So
I wasn't aware that the half sheet pan was dreaded.
it's terrible because people don't see them on the rack and they push something else into it and it falls off the back and you lose whatever was on it.
Now I see the dread. That makes
Or
sense.
you go to grab it off the rack thinking that you're grabbing a full sheet pan and you pull it with such force that you drop it.
Yeah. See.
Either way, you drop it.
Trouble.
Okay, so I give it a little bit of a fold just to strengthen it because it's been sitting overnight, and
That looks beautiful.
Little bit of bench flour. I put it through a sheeter and I go down to number 9 on my sheeter, where I use a really tiny rolling pin. Go quickly through the rest of the process.
What inspired you to make this recipe? You said it was accidental.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, there's just so much sourdough on Instagram during COVID, and just wanted to do it better.
Yeah. The competition, gotcha.
Well, yeah, how much of that sourdough is still alive? Like,
Yeah.
who is still feeding their starter?
Is anyone still feeding
Yeah.
sourdough?
That they started during
I just
COVID?
admitted mine's kind of dying in the back of my fridge, so.
See? So this is a docker. It's going to punch tiny holes in the top of the dough so that it rises consistently and you don't get one of those big giant, you know, when you get a slice of pizza and all the cheese rolls off of it. That happens with donuts too. If it has a giant bubble on top, the glaze is going to just pull that bubble off and then you have half a donut. Just using ring cutters, standard donuts between 3 and 3.5 inches if you have a donut cutter, or if you have circle cutters, it's between 3 and 3.5 inches you can pick. But that's what most of it is set up for. So outside, and the hole. The hole makes it fry evenly. It evenly distributes the heat in the fryer. That's why it's there. So then, once I have these cut out, I can put them on a floured sheet pan and proof them. So I can proof them in a proof box. It takes about 90 minutes to 2 hours if it is at 80% humidity and 85 degrees. Or room temperature for about 4 hours, depending on what your situation is. I've done a volume that requires proofing on the floor at room temperature so that you can get through the whole production. So it requires a longer time. Then this is what they look like when they are perfectly proofed, which these amazingly are perfectly proofed. I just kind of poke them a little bit and see if I can still see a dimple. If it disappears completely, it's not proofed enough. If it collapses under your finger, it's overproofed. So I'm going to drop them in the fryer.
So in at home, you can put this in, you could just do like if you don't have a deep fryer at home, what's the best way to
You don't
deep
have
fry
a deep
on
fryer at home?
that? I do actually, but
I like to use a pot with short sides. Like you only need enough oil so that they can flip over.
right.
Okay, it's not a deep fryer. Donut fryers and funnel cake fryers are the same thing, and they only have like a couple inches of oil in them. Because if it's proofed properly, it's going to float on top, on the surface of the oil. So it's never gonna sink down in. If it sinks down in, it's underproofed, or you forgot the sourdough. But that's the ticket. So then when they get nice and brown on one side, I'm gonna flip them over and let them keep frying. And then the glaze is the fun part. I have a praline glaze that's in the recipe packet that I've already made, or Rebecca made. And then I'm going to mix a coconut glaze. So powdered sugar and a paddle, or you can do it by hand with a whisk. And a little bit of corn syrup. This helps it bind and shine. There we go. And then this is a can of coconut milk. I'm going to hold back a little bit of it. Actually, no, I'm going to add the whole thing. I like the cans of coconut milk because they have that fatty part.
Do you want to blend it so you're using both parts
Yeah,
if they're
well,
separated?
I do use both parts, but it's going to go in here and mix, so it's going to blend quickly. Oh. The cool thing about the glazes are it's an opportunity to incorporate any local flavors, fruits, berries. You just start with powdered sugar and then add any liquid or fruit puree or jam or anything that you'd like, even a reduced alcohol, beer, anything.
Interesting.
And then this has some lime zest in it, which was Genevieve's idea. And a pinch of salt, also Genevieve's idea.
Could you use other sweetener, like syrups, in place of the corn syrup? Or is corn?
No, because it's all powdered sugar based. So
okay.
I mean, that's the thing that you have to worry about, I guess, if you're worried about something with the donuts, is the or with the glaze, is that it's all sugar. So if you use something like Guinness, Guinness is malt based and you're adding it to a sugar, so it just disappears. So you have to really be aware of that and make sure it's going to hold up to the sugar, the high sugar content. Okay, so let's see. Cool. So here's the coconut glaze. Now, the temperature of the donut matters in as much as what consistency you'd like the glaze to be. So if you want it to do that Krispy Kreme thing where it completely kind of envelops the donut, then you can glaze it while the donut is hot. But if you want it to kind of sit on the donut on top of it, then you can do it when the donut is cool. So this is toasted coconut, regular coconut, desiccated coconut, all together so that it has different textures in a very tiny bowl. Okay, and then I can just dip it. So that's
Yum,
the coconut.
amazing. Anyone have any questions while Rachel's still making these delicious looking donuts? So how long would you wait to, if you want, so these are cool donuts here? Like these have been already
Nope,
cooled, or these are
these
the ones that just came
out
out?
of the fryer.
Okay, nice.
So that's gonna start to run a
So
little
this
bit.
will run down, okay.
Yeah.
But you don't ever, you wouldn't need to do both sides, right? Or you just want to do the top? You wouldn't
Just the
glaze
top
bottom
and
then let it
down.
run? Okay.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I do both sides if it's getting dredged in cinnamon and sugar or
Right.
something like that.
Okay. Yum. Okay. And my one question was, with the corn syrup, could you replace that with a different type of syrup sweetener or honey?
Yep,
or maple?
Honeyworks. I've used agave,
Okay.
maple
Maple.
syrup.
Yum.
It just needs something that's gonna kind of hold it all together.
Right, to make that glaze. Lovely. Okay.
That's it.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Rachel. It's looking beautiful. Now I'll have a reason to get my deep fryer out of my basement and try these.
I like the tabletop fryer because it holds its temperature and you don't have to worry about catching anything on fire.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Great. Okay. Sorry about that. This mic is on. So now we can segue over then for Genevieve to begin demoing her whoopie pies.
Hello, how are you? So today I'm going to talk about using hemp flour in making desserts, and today I'm going to do hemp flour whoopie pies. So hemp flour is extremely sustainable, and the hemp plant is amazing. We use the entire plant, from the stalk, the flowers, the leaves, the seeds, the root, everything. So hemp flour is actually from the process of taking the seeds and extracting the oil. And then you have this hemp meal afterwards. And then they take that meal and they grind it. They grind it into this powder. And it's really remarkable because this powder has high protein, low carbohydrates. It's got a lot of fiber. It's pretty much like the same nutrients as soy. So it's kind of a bonus when you're eating your dessert, you're eating something healthy. That's not why I'm using it. I'm using it to be sustainable, but it's nice to say you're eating a healthy dessert. Why not? So I'm gonna start right now with my hemp flour. And I think it's a really beautiful color, personally, and it's all natural. So I'm gonna take the hemp flour, I'm gonna put it into my KitchenAid bowl. And also, I'm going to take my confectionery sugar and put it right there. And then I'm going to mix it just so it becomes homogeneous, the two ingredients. Okay, so you mix it till it's a little bit, I don't know, it's like one color, homogeneous. Then I'm going to stream in my egg whites. And you're gonna look at the recipe and say, wow, this is a remarkable amount of egg whites. Because it is. I believe it's 441 grams, which is a lot of egg whites.
What does that like equate to in terms of
Pardon
maybe
me?
number of eggs? Like how many eggs would that equate to, do you think?
8.
8,
Yeah,
okay.
I think about 8. Also, it's okay that you're going to be using that many, because in restaurants, there's a lot of people that make fresh pasta and they use nice, beautiful egg yolks. Then you have all of these egg whites. And yes, you can make macaroons. Yes, you can do lots of things, but also why not make some hemp whoopie pies? Because it's delicious.
That color is really like,
Isn't it
such
beautiful?
a rich, like beautiful color, yeah.
I really love it. It reminds me of like Smokey from the Black Lagoon kind of thing. Okay. So I just scraped it down just so it'd be nice and homogeneous. And now I'm done with this step. So we have this luxury here of having another KitchenAid bowl. So I'm going to just take that nice clean KitchenAid bowl. If you don't have that luxury, which I completely understand, just take that, put it into a metal bowl, wash this out because you're going to be using egg whites. And egg whites, they can't have any impurities, so it whips up very nicely. Okay, so I'm taking my beautifully clean egg whites, my whip attachments, and I'm putting it on the KitchenAid. Now, I'm going to take the water, right here, and then I'm going to add my sugar. So what I'm doing is I'm going to get it to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. So right now you don't want to ever stir your sugar because agitation promotes crystallization. You don't want to stir it when it's starting to boil, but I had a little sugar right here, so I just wanted the water to catch it. And now I see all of the sugar is getting caught by the water to make it like wet sand. So I am good now.
So even though there's still some on the top, it will incorporate. That's sufficient because it's spread across. Yeah, gotcha.
So a little bit of how I developed this recipe was I was recipe testing for my book, so Baking an Impact. So it's a brand new book that I'm doing, and it's all about making small little choices for more sustainable, for little small choices for a bigger impact in our world. So I know from my perspective, I really like eating desserts because it's nostalgic, it's comforting, it's sweet, it's delicious, and like her donuts, I've ate 6 of those in one sitting. It's not even a joke, like I have. And that's what I like to eat dessert. But let's be real, butter and sugar and flour, that's not good for the environment, for all of the carbon emissions, for everything. And I'm not here to lecture you about what happens in the world. You need to do your own research on that. But for me, I feel like my job is to try to help people understand how you can do your part. So meaning, there's a chapter on alternatives. So instead of using traditional AP flour, why not use hemp flour? It gives a beautiful color, it doesn't really mess with the texture, and when you add the fillings, it tastes really delicious. Another chapter is food waste. So I have a chocolate chip cookie in there. Everyone loves chocolate chip cookies. I love chocolate chip cookies. How can I make that still nostalgic and make it sustainable? So what I did is I took cake. So whenever you're in a bakery and you have cake and you have cake scraps, what do you do with it? Yes, you can make cake pops, but come on. And rum balls, but we've had a lot of that. So I wanted to try to just think of something a little bit different. And for me, that was, why not make it into a flour? So I dehydrated it in the oven. And
How long does that take to dehydrate, like cake and scraps?
I mean, I honestly, because I was thinking about like the oven and like that's also not sustainable having on there. I was just baking it with, when I was baking macaroons, I kind of just put it at the same time.
Okay.
And it worked. Okay. So I was like, all right, this is great. So it took maybe like 15 minutes, but with something else baking. And so I took that and like, let's use a blender, because if you're cooking, you probably have a blender at home. So then I made it as fine as a flour as I could. And I substituted the entire AP flour that I had in my recipe that I formulated for this, and I put all chiffon flour in it, and it worked. And it actually, the chocolate chip cookie has this like caramel, like this Maillard browning flavor. It's a little crunchier, like crispy. It's really yummy. And when I've given it to people, they're like, what is this? It tastes really good. It's a really good chocolate chip cookie. I'm like, food waste. It's actually garbage that you're eating. No, not really. But it's like really delicious. And then I took it to a next level, and then I made a chiffon cake with the chiffon flour. Oh. So then now it's just like full circle. Wow. You're eating chiffon cake, chiffon flour.
That's amazing.
It was fun. And then I have another chapter on seasonality, I mean, that's a big thing too. People say, It's seasonal, it's local. I got it, it's local, 75 miles away. That's not local. Look at the truck you had to take and all of those emissions for that. For me, local is like 10-mile radius. So if I could ride my bike and get it, for me, that's local. And I'm actually from the Hudson Valley, so I know the Hudson Valley very, very well. And that being said, this pot's a little small, but that's okay. That being said, I know the environment pretty well. But I know you all are not from the Hudson Valley, so that just means you need to get in tune with your environment a little bit more. Maybe instead of watching Netflix for 10 minutes, go outside in your backyard for 10 minutes and just look around you. And yeah, it's kind of like that. What else do I have in there? Ancient grains. Ancient grains was something that I really wanted to do because ancient grains are more nutritious and I really wanted to showcase them.
What are some examples of ancient grains? I think we probably know some, but.
Quinoa, encorn, emmer, spelt, and I wanted to make this chapter just not bread heavy because I feel like when someone's like ancient grains, oh, so it's a bread chapter. It's not. I actually have an ice cream float that is made from sorghum syrup, I think it's a honey malt ice cream, sorghum, what's it called? I forget, but it's like all very nice. It's an ice cream sundae made from ancient grains.
Yeah.
And then I have a bulgur pudding instead of like rice pudding, bulgur pudding, and then I have like a encorn lavash, and yes, I do have a couple breads in there.
Nice.
But I just want to like showcase it just for a little bit, like different things.
Are you working with teff in the cookbook as well? I know we have some
I
folks
actually
from the teff
made
company. Okay.
teff cereal.
Okay.
So for me, I really like Captain Crunch. I really like sugary things. I really like sugar. I have no cavities, by the way.
Okay.
It sounds like I have a mouthful of cavities. I don't. But I love teff. And teff I've only seen in like Ethiopian flatbreads. So I made a teff crepe with it. And then I've also made a teff cereal. So it's egg white based, sugar, and then teff flour.
Okay.
And it's really nice. It's nice and crispy. And I paired it with blueberries and pecans.
Yum.
And yeah, so I do use teff.
And Genevieve, what are you? Tell me what you're doing right now. Like, what temperature are you waiting for?
I am getting my sugar and my water to 120 degrees Celsius, and it's at 116 Celsius. When it hits 117, that's when I like to put my egg whites on. The reason why is it kind of just like, kind of goes at the same time. It's usually around the same time ready. Now, that's not an exact science. If my egg whites aren't ready, my sugar's gotta wait.
Right.
So it's at 117 now, and that's when I put on the mixer. So if you notice, I'm not agitating it. I'm just sticking it right there. I'm not like twirling it because I really don't want crystals. So again, agitation promotes crystallization, and you don't want that when you're sugar cooking, trying to get to a certain temperature. It's great for rock candy. It's great for tempering chocolate, but not what I'm doing right now. So.
And it's starting to have like a little bit of color. Is that an indicator that it's close to that temperature?
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, is it starting to have a little bit of color? Is that like an indicator it's close to 120?
Can see that. Yeah, it's like very, 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 very light ivory. Like you want to say there's a little bit of yellow in it, but it's not because it's not caramelizing. So, all right, so it's there. I'm going to turn the off. Take this. It's a little hot. All right, so what I'm looking for with my egg whites, I'm looking so they get nice and foamy, like latte foam. That's what I'm looking for, and it's there. So I'm gonna stream in my sugar mixture right on the side of the bowl. I don't want my whip attachment to get any sugar on it though. Do you see how it's getting nice and voluminous? To me, it looks like shaving cream. I don't really like saying this is soft peak, this is medium peak, this is blah, blah, blah peak, because in my experience, everybody has their own example of a peak. So I kind of like doing familiar things. So latte foam, this looks like shaving cream.
Yep.
So this is really hot, and so don't touch it. You want to get it till, you're going to laugh at this, but a whisper of warm, meaning like our body temperature is at 98 degrees, right? Everybody should be. I want it to be around like 100, 101 when I take it off, just so it incorporates into my hemp flour very nicely.
So these whoopie pies are actually pretty, can you hear me? No, cannot hear me. They're
No,
pretty,
I have really bad hearing.
That's okay. They're pretty like protein rich because hemp is a high protein flour, and then you're adding in like the egg and, okay.
So it's like you're eating a steak.
Yeah, pretty much, but dessert
But it's
steak.
dessert.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that's what I like
Sold.
to call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then what I'm filling it with, in the book, I fill it with an antique apple called Silken. I really like to introduce things that are lost. Like, we should be using antique and heirloom apples, not just like the regular Granny Smith Gala, Honeycrisp, Fuji that we have in our grocery stores. So I use Silken apples and I make apple butter out of it. And then I use Concord grapes because if they're grown in the same season, they're gonna taste delicious together. So I make a Concord grape jam. Today, we are gonna do apricot jam and a caramel whipped ganache. But this whipped ganache doesn't have any gelatin in it. It's actually just cornstarch based, which I think is pretty neat. So it's not vegan, but it is vegetarian. Now, some people have asked me, could I have done aquafaba for this recipe? And the thing is, that's not the point of the book. The book is small changes in the recipe. If I say now you need aquafaba, you need hemp flour, that's not, people aren't realistically always gonna do that. It's just one little tweak in your recipe. And I feel like that's gonna introduce people to the idea of, oh, okay, this isn't too bad. And then we can work on people, put a little bit more changes in their food and stuff like that.
Yep. That's like an approachable way to do it, is one change instead of many changes.
Yeah, and I haven't seen anything on the market like that. And that's just kind of like what I've been preaching. And I was like, well, maybe I should just do something about it. So this is kind of my hopeful way of how I can help the environment out. But again, I know we're going to want to eat our dessert, so.
Yeah. How do the CIA students learn about this, like subbing, make alternative ingredients and changing recipes like this?
They do in a sense. I know in my bake shop, I've been introducing natural colors, so they love the color blue. My students love blue. They love it. And I'm like, all right, let's figure this out. So I take blue spirulina, which is an algae, and I use that for blue. And sometimes I want this bright green that just doesn't look real. So I'll use actually green spirulina for that. And pink, I mean, we can use raspberry puree, strawberry puree for that. Yellow, I actually like using dandelions. So, it's good. So I'll take dandelions. I feel like I was screaming at you guys.
No, it's okay.
I'll take dandelions and I will pick a lot. I have a lot of dandelions. And my mom's like, you should just get rid of the dandelions. I'm like, no.
How do you use the dandelions then as a coloring? Like, what are you
So I take that bright yellow head and then I actually freeze them. I've never done it not freezing because I want to try to get a lot. And then, for you, thank you. And then what I do is I boil them actually. Not boil them, I like make a simple syrup and then I kind of put the dandelions in and then I just let it stay there and then I blend it. It's worked really well.
Interesting.
Oh, I need that. Yeah, sorry. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take this beautiful meringue that looks like shaving cream. It's like very beautiful. And I'm going to take it and I'm going to take my beautiful hemp mixture. I'm going to put it back on the mixer. And then I'm gonna take my paddle attachment and use it again. So I kind of just mix it a little bit, just so, I don't know, I'm in control of my meringue. I don't know, I just always do that. It's just what I do. Thank you. And I'm sacrificing some of it. I know that sounds kind of weird, right? But I'm sacrificing some of it so it lightens up my mixture.
Yeah.
So you can't really I mean, I guess you could overmix this, but you're just mixing till it's homogeneous and then you're done. So, oh good, you can see. So it's nice and the color is just beautiful. Now, I am gonna say this, if you're making this at home, I am gonna be real with you right now. The actual hemp part of it, like the cake part that we're making right now, is very strong. It's very, very strong. But I don't know anyone that's gonna eat that without the filling.
Strong in flavor.
Strong in flavor.
Okay.
Very strong in flavor. And tastes like concentrated spinach almost. But when you add the tart, so the tart on this is the apricot, and then the creamy, which is the whipped ganache, it balances out, and that's what you want. I mean, you never take a dish at a restaurant and just kind of just eat, like you just eat the sauce, then you just eat the vegetable, then you eat everything together. So for this, eat everything together, and then you'll have a very successful dessert. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't even think you can take a whoopie pie apart, right? Like, it's not
I mean,
like an
like,
Oreo. I mean, you could, I suppose, but I don't think
you could, but
you
like, why
would want
you?
to. Yeah.
So I just have to say that disclaimer. And you guys are gonna taste it tomorrow, which is so awesome.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm very excited for you guys to try this.
Tomorrow, I'm remembering, is it with not with breakfast, so with like, is a refreshment break?
I'm gonna be honest, I don't know.
Okay.
But I know you're gonna eat them.
I'm the one who should
'Cause I
know
made
this,
them.
so let me go. Yeah.
So if you saw that, I did about 3 additions, I believe. So, and now what I'm doing is I'm just making sure it's nice and homogeneous. Now, you know, mixers are amazing, but you still need to do the final mix with your hand. So you don't need the mixer anymore. Kind of just do the rest with your hands to make sure it is nice. Oh, sorry. It is nice and homogeneous. You know, there's always going to be a little bit on the bottom.
And you said
Smells
you
so
can
good.
or cannot overmix this one?
I mean, I'm going to say you can.
You probably can.
You probably
right?
can
Yeah.
because of the egg white. But I wouldn't be so careful where it's like a decoise, where it's like every time you're deflating it and you get a really bad product,
Right.
it could be over. But I just do it until I don't see any streaks, and then I give it like another fold for good luck. So this is what it looks like. I mean, it looks really cool. It looks like stones almost, like a stone batter.
Yeah, or like a nut butter almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if you made your own pistachio paste, kind of like that.
Yeah.
So then I'm just gonna take some, and I'm gonna fill my piping bag up. And then I already have a already pre-stenciled parchment paper. And whenever you use a parchment paper, I always, thank you, I always flip it over. So this is where it was traced. You always want to flip it over. Now, if you were doing this in production and you had to do like 4 or 5 trays or 400 or 500 trays, you would want to put another piece of parchment paper on this, or really a Silpat. I would use a Silpat, and then you would just take this off every time, so you don't have to keep making these. So whenever I pipe, I always pipe halfway, and then I turn it, just so you're not going over yourself.
Oh, to reuse the stencil part, you're saying?
Oh, yeah, I always
Yeah.
reuse the stencil
Yeah,
part,
gotcha.
yeah. So I'm a lefty, so I start here.
And have you tried adding like is it possible to add a flavor to this stage of it? Meaning like in the batter, could you add like cocoa powder or other cinnamon and things like that?
You totally could. Well, not cinnamon, I'm allergic to that one.
Okay.
But You definitely could, but then I think you might be taking away from the hemp.
Right.
But you could definitely do chocolate. You could definitely do cinnamon, nutmeg. I don't see why not. So then you have these beautiful shells. You do not need to dry them out. The process is very similar to macaroons. If anybody was kind of like, this kind of feels like macaroons. Well, that was the point when I started doing it. I was like, I'm gonna make hemp flour macaroons. No, I am not. It did not work out very well. But then I was like, this tastes like a really good whoopie pie. So that's kind of what started this.
Nice. How long did they bake for?
I bake them at like 350 for like 15 to 18 minutes.
Okay.
Honestly, just till it's a little bit, like you touch it and it springs back. It's like a cake. And then I already put them together. So, like that. And then, so I like to take my apricot jam and put a nice healthy amount of it in the center. Because remember, you don't want to be cheap with the filling. No one wants to have that. And then I like to go around. You can go the other way where you go around first. There's really no right or wrong way for that. And then I take it and I give it a little love pat. Like how you would like pet your cat. And then there you go. You have these beautiful little stone-like things. And you can put a little confectionery sugar to finish them or whatever you'd like. But yeah, they look like little stones and I love that.
Delicious. They look great.
Thank you.
Yeah, a round of applause. Great job. Okay, any questions for these amazing bakers right here? No? Yeah.
Does the donut recipe scale up kind of directly?
Absolutely. Yeah.
The donut recipe scales.
It was created big, and I brought it small, so, yeah.
That's great. Any other ones? Who's excited to make these at home or in your operation? Yeah. Great. Okay, we got some hands. That's looking good. Okay, let me just do a time check. I think we're pretty much here. Oh, yeah, we have 1 minute. So now, well, first, thank you both. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Genevieve.
Thank you for having me.
Really great. So many great ideas shared. I'm really looking forward to the cookbook coming out, and I'm really excited to also check out your cookbook upstairs. So the next thing for all of us to do is to head up to the mezzanine. So out this way, or you can go up that way as well. You can like peek into the kitchen just to see what the kitchen workshop's finishing up. But there's a reception that's set up on the mezzanine. And there'll be tastings from Chef Abra Barron's and Stephen Satterfield's workshops, as well as wineries. That's where there'll be some book signings. You'll see Rachel with We'll Run for Donuts, as well as a cookbook from Abra, Andrea Nguyen, who was here before with Evergreen Vietnamese, Nick Sharma with Vegetable, and Rachel, as I mentioned. So check that out, and then you can hang around until 6. Program concludes, and then we'll see you back tomorrow. Breakfast is at 8, so 8 to 8:30, and then we'll get started, I think, right at 8:30 tomorrow morning. So thank you so much for being here, and enjoy the reception.
Eat a donut. They're so good.
Hi, my name is Josh Harnden, and we're here at 11 Madison Park. I'm going to be making a sunflower salad for you guys. So to start, I wanted to talk about the ingredient that's probably the most unique about the dish, is the actual sunflowers. So these are pretty general sunflower that you'll see growing around. There's a few different types. Some of them are super bitter and astringent. This variety is something that we grow at our farm that we find to be less bitter and less medicinal tasting. We try to utilize everything on the flower itself. What it actually looks like when we break it down is something like this. So we clean the whole flower, we clean the stamen from the center, we remove the petals, and we keep it in acidulated water. You really want to clean all the green off. It's super fibrous, and then you break it down just to the core. And then when it's cooked, you actually end up with a texture that's similar to artichokes. This is example of some that are cooked. These have been cooked in a white wine and vegetable stock with a little bit of saffron. And that helps with the discoloring as well, because they start out pretty pale and pretty white. So if you add like a little bit of saffron, it gives it a nice kind of yellow golden color to them. The salad can be paired with some summer beans, some yellow wax beans, a little bit of green tomatoes that have been pickled, some sunflower seeds, a little bit of a mustard aioli, and then we try to do different varieties of the petals themselves. So we've baked some chips that are simply baked with a little bit of olive oil and salt in between silpats and roasted at 300 degrees in the oven. And then we have some that we fermented. We fermented them with a rice paste, a little bit of chili, a little bit of garlic and onion, similar to what you would do for a kimchi. And then we have some that are just fresh that have been washed and cleaned. To start building the salad, we use a rectangular mold. We're going to pipe in 4 dots of the garlic aioli that's spread out evenly within the mold. On top of that, we're going to place some of our summer bean salad that has epazote, a little bit of yuzu, a little bit of chili, and green beans folded into it. Now this is probably one of the most difficult parts of building the salad, is just getting it into the mold in an even layer. And something that we use to help with this process is that we take an offset spatula and we bend that back in an even layer. Just work from one end to the other until you have just even sides. You want to make sure that your salad is not too wet when you pack it into the mold. Otherwise, the juices are going to push out the sides and you're going to end up with something that you're not really happy with. Once you have that, you're going to remove the mold. Now we're just going to place some piles of pickled green tomatoes, just for a pop of acidity. These have been pickled in a white balsamic pickling liquid. After that, we're going to do some candied sunflower seeds. These have been cooked in a simple syrup. You let the sugar reduce down, you place them into a colander, and then you rinse off any of the excess sugar quickly, and then you fry it in an oil that's at about 350 degrees. From here, we're going to add some of our kimchied sunflower petals. They're pretty strong, so we don't really need to add too many. Just adds like a little bit of funk and a little bit of acid to the dish. And you want to spread these out evenly so you don't get too much in one bite. Then from here, we're going to start adding our sunflower petals. We're going to start at the top of the dish. We're going to do some thinly sliced yellow wax beans in between each layer. The sunflower chips we're going to add on last because they will go limp. And one by one, keep plating until you get to the base. And add one more bean just to finish it off, just so that the salad is fully covered. Now another fun part of this is we've taken the sunflower marigold, these pieces here, we've thinly sliced them and layered them out onto a piece of parchment. So it's naturally pretty sticky itself, so you can actually take that with your offset spatula and lift it up, and it should stay in one piece. If it does break apart, you can always fix it. If it sticks to the paper, you want to make sure you lift that first, and when you press it on just lightly. So now you can see it's kind of lifted up on one side, and you can just press it down just so slightly in the center. The chips that we made, and just tuck them under in between the rows. These are nice just to give it a little bit more texture, but they're also just adding a nice natural color to it. Then from here, we're just going to finish it with a little bit of a yuzu citrus vinaigrette, and we're just going to brush over the veil just because it does dry out a little bit. Then to finish, a little bit of fleur de sel. That's it. So here you have a summer bean salad with sunflowers, epazote, and yuzu.
Today, we're making these delicious roasted carrot tamales. I'll show you some plant-based techniques for bringing out the earthy and sweet flavor of the carrots. I was inspired to make these tamales from the corn tamales I tasted at Dirt Candy. We're going to make masa with carrot broth. Fill the tamales with roasted carrots and chiles, and serve the tamales with a carrot and habanero coulis. We'll start by making the roasted carrot filling. Here I have some heirloom carrots, poblano chiles, and white onion that I've roasted with olive oil, salt, and pepper in a 425-degree Fahrenheit oven for 30 to 45 minutes until tender. Once the roasted vegetables have cooled, pulse them in a food processor to a coarse consistency. Adjust the seasoning to taste. Set this aside while we make our coulis. For our coulis, here are some orange carrots that I've washed, peeled, and cut into a medium dice. Remember to save all of your carrot peels because we're going to use them when we make our broth later. Into a saucepan, add our carrots, as well as some diced habanero chiles with the seeds and stems removed, and Mexican oregano. To add a deep umami flavor, add some prepared Knorr Professional Caldo de Vegetales. Bring this to a boil and allow to simmer until the carrots are very tender. Remove the vegetables from the broth. In a blender, puree the vegetables until smooth, using broth to adjust the consistency. Simmer the carrot peelings in some prepared Knorr Professional Caldo de Vegetales for 15 minutes to extract flavor. Strain, reserving the broth and discarding the peelings. Now let's make our masa dough. In a stand mixer, beat some vegetable shortening with a couple tablespoons of the carrot broth until fluffy. In another mixing bowl, combine masa harina, baking powder, and salt. Add the masa mixture to the shortening mixture and combine to form a soft dough. Add additional broth if you need to. You're looking for a dough with a soft paste-like texture. Cover the dough and set aside. And now we'll build the tamales. Here, I have some corn husks that have been soaked in warm water for 30 minutes so they're nice and pliable. Place the corn husk shiny side up and spread about 1/4 cup masa dough on the husk, about 1/4 inch thick. Place 1 to 2 tablespoons of carrot filling down the center of the dough. Roll up the tamales. Repeat until all corn husks are filled and rolled. Steam the tamales for 45 minutes to an hour. To check to see if the tamales are done, unroll one and see if the masa still sticks to the husk. If it does, cook for an additional 15 minutes. If it releases, it is cooked. Now we're ready to serve our tamales. Cover the bottom of the serving plate with a prepared hot coulis. Drizzle with crema. Remove a tamale from the husk and place in the center of the coulis. Top with microgreens. Made with Knorr Professional Caldo de Vegetales. This is a delicious and comforting vegetarian twist on traditional tamales that your customers will love.
My name is Magnus Young, and I'm the Chef de Cuisine and Culinary Manager at the Cliff Family Winery and Brisketteria Food Truck in St. Helena, California. The food truck can be found parked outside the Cliff Family Tasting Room, and we serve a seasonally inspired menu with organic produce from our farm on Owl Mountain. I'm going to show you how to make this watermelon melanchilada, a fruity, sweet, and refreshing update to a traditional michelada. A michelada is a beer cocktail made with tomato juice, lime juice, Worcestershire, and hot sauce. Watermelon is very popular on beverage menus, and in this version, we're going to use watermelon juice instead of tomato juice. First, let's start by making the watermelon juice. Here I have watermelon that I've cut into chunks. Puree the watermelon in a blender or food processor and strain. Watermelon is 92% water, making it very easy to puree and juice. The yield should be about 2 cups total. You can discard the solids or you can save it to use for later. I like to use to make watermelon butter. Chill the juice. Mix the chilled watermelon juice with 48 ounces of chilled Mexican lager, hot sauce, Worcestershire, and lime juice. You can serve these melancholadas in a beer glass, margarita glass, or even a mason jar. I have a 16-ounce beer glass here, and I'm going to rim the edge with a lime wedge, then rim the glass with a mixture of flaky sea salt and tahini. Add a little ice to the glass and pour in the melancholada. Garnish with a slice of watermelon dusted with chili powder or tahini. I'm using a slice of yellow watermelon. Watermelon and chili are a classic and delicious combination. This watermelon melanchilada is so refreshing and a great addition to a brunch menu. My name is Magnus Young, and I'm the Chef de Cuisine and Culinary Manager at the Cliff Family Winery and Pesqueteria Food Truck in St. Helena, California. The food truck can be found parked outside the Cliff Family Tasting Room, and we serve a seasonally inspired menu with organic produce from our farm on Owl Mountain. A sabik is a traditional pita or laffa bread stuffed with fried eggplants, hard-boiled egg, chopped salad, amba, and tahini sauce. It's an Iraqi Jewish street food that has become a staple of Israeli cuisine. This sabik with watermelon salad and watermelon rind amba is a creative and contemporary take on an Israeli-style sabik. Let's start by making one of the sauces, watermelon rind amba. Amba is a super pungent, tangy mango sauce popular in Iraq and Israel. In this version, I'm going to make the sauce using watermelon rind in place of mango. Considering that watermelon is actually in the gourd family, you can think of using the watermelon rind just like you would a squash. It has a cucumbery flavor and texture. Using the rind also helps reduce food waste. In a large sauté pan, sweat roughly chopped watermelon rind with shallots and garlic and olive oil until it reduces by half. Here I have a spice mixture of yellow mustard, fenugreek, cumin, sumac, and turmeric. Add the spices to bloom. Add apple cider vinegar, then reduce by a quarter. Add a pinch of salt to taste. Puree the mixture in a blender until smooth. Add some lemon juice and a little more salt to taste if needed. Now onto the watermelon salad. Usually this salad is made with tomatoes, but instead I'm using diced watermelon, the juicy flesh and more savory rind. In a large mixing bowl, toss together 8 ounces of diced watermelon flesh, diced watermelon rind, diced Persian cucumber, diced red onion, and finely chopped parsley. Combine with a quarter cup of olive oil, lemon juice, and adjust seasoning with salt as needed. Here I have eggplants that I'll partially peel in strips and cut into half-inch thick slices. If you're using a larger eggplant, you could cut the pieces into rounds instead. Lay the eggplant onto a parchment-lined sheet tray. Season each piece with salt, pepper, and a drizzle of olive oil, and bake at 400 Fahrenheit for 20 to 30 minutes until golden brown and tender. Now we're ready to put our sabik together. Fill each pita pocket with a little tahini sauce, watermelon rind amba, slices of roasted eggplant, quartered hard-boiled eggs, and watermelon salad. Top each sabik with more watermelon rind amba and tahini sauce. A sabik really is one of the world's best sandwiches, and the addition of watermelon brings a bright and fruity flavor and a crunchy, refreshing texture.